Hello, welcome to another edition of the Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner. I'm your host, as always, Mike Murray. Today, I'm thrilled to speak with one of the finest coaches in American swimming, a fellow ASCA board member, and my friend, Jeff Julian. Jeff is the head coach of Rose Bowl Aquatics in Pasadena, California, and he joins us today to discuss the topic of coaching with intention, among many other things. Coach Julian was a 12-time All-American representing the USC Trojans during his career as a collegian, where he won a silver medal at the 1997 World University Games in the 200 butterfly. He's played many roles in Southern California swimming for the LSC and governance, and as I said, is a member of the American Swim Coaches Association Board of Directors. Now, Jeff, we've had many guests on Coach's Corner, and you have been an especially important guest, so much so that our leader here at Fitter and Faster wanted to jump on in pre-production and just tell you how thankful we are to have you on today. It's the perfect week, in my opinion, to have you on as we get ready for Thanksgiving, and appreciate all of the messaging that you've done for our sport and the goodwill. What I'd like to do is I would like to open this up with a question about family and swimming in family, since it's been such a large part of your life. You've had such an incredible journey in this sport as a coach, an athlete, and as a dad. You know, you and I were able to share a couple moments together cheering for Team USA last summer in Italy. Swimming's literally in your blood. Your wife is an Olympian. The passion you have for the sport is contagious. Talk to us a little bit about what our sport means to you and the unique role it's played in your life.
Wow. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me today, and thank you for that introduction. It's an honor to be here, and an honor to be as part of the Coach's Corner and the amazing work Fitter and Faster does, and you do at putting this on. The sport of swimming has been in my life since I remember, and it started really with my mom, who ingrained this love of the sport for me. She was a swimmer that just loved the sport. National level swimmer, but she was more the distance type swimmer. So she would do things like she swam across Lake Michigan twice, which is just crazy to me, but she just loved the sport that much. My aunt swam. So when I grew up, my brother and sister, who are 9 and 11 years older than me, were already in the water. So I grew up first just running around the pool deck on the old El Monte Aquatics days, for anybody who knows the history of Southern California swimming. But El Monte Aquatics days, too, when they moved over to Industry Hills and actually opened up that facility. My brother and sister were on that team. So I've been around the pool all my life. And for me, it's been one of those things that it created my family. It created my sense of drive and encapsulated everything I love about kind of the passion of life and working towards something that you truly want to achieve and truly want to go after. And so swimming to me is just something that's grown over the years. It was that family connection first, and then it was through my high school days of the best friends that I've created, and then college as well, creating the true friends of my life that I will always be in contact with. And those people that you don't have to talk to every day or even every month these days, but I can pick up the phone a year and a half from now and have a conversation like we talked last week. And those are the relationships that we built through this sport of swimming. And then to come out of college and having a good career, but hurting my shoulder, so not quite finishing the way I wanted to, having to kind of cut it a little bit shorter than wanted. And thinking that I was just done, with swimming and didn't want to do it anymore. And it was a grind that it was fun while it lasted, but I was ready to move on and find something else that I can be passionate about. It's hard to do when you find something as meaningful as swimming to me, though. So something that means so much. I went to 3 different jobs and worked about 2 years, which seemed to be my threshold, and was doing fine on the jobs, but it just didn't mean anything to me. It was a job. So I'd move and try to find something else. But in the end, I just didn't find anything that created the same passion. And if I don't have passion, I'm not going to have drive to truly be successful. And if I don't have that, I'm not feeding a deep part of myself and my being. And swimming was what allows me to do it. So I can get back into kind of the sport of swimming. And now as a coach, understanding even more in terms of all of the different pieces of swimming that means so much to me and why I love this sport. It's not all about the positives, but it's about this whole thing as a collective sport and what it can do for people, again, much outside of the water, but just in general and for their lives, much beyond when they take their last stroke as a swimmer.
It's an incredible perspective that you had, because as you say, your mom was so invested in the sport, and your family, as it's grown over the years, and being a leader in our sport and coaching at different places, you've developed this wonderful perspective of what it means and what it means in your life. Who are some of those early coaches that made an impact on you, that maybe ignited that passion for giving back to the swimming community as a coach later in your life?
Wow. I mean, to a degree, at every level, every coach that I've ever worked with has added to that in some degree. I've had ones that I truly love working all the times, and I've had ones that we've butted heads and had to work on our communication to get the most out of things. But what I've learned from them is huge on every level. From my first ever coach when I was in a more of a novice league, and just loved swimming, and my coach just loved swimming. He's actually Tom Milich, who was the Cal Poly San Luis Obispo coach for the past, I don't know how many years now, 10 years. It was his brother. And he was a physical therapist, but he just loved the sport of swimming. So right from the start, I was with a coach that just loved it and loved to make it fun to be challenging. And it was just a novice thing, so we were having fun, and he knew that. But he loved to make it challenging, and he had a group of boys especially that I remember. I know there was girls there as well, but we were 8, 9, 10, 11 years old on this novice team, and just loving to go and be around each other to play first, and then get in the water and just kind of do everything we could that was asked for us by this coach. And then I moved over to Industry Hills to kind of take that next step. And Don Garman, who's a great age group coach in Southern California for years, just took it to that next level, but the same kind of just love for the sport and love to kind of motivate the swimmers, and sometimes do it by calling us names and getting on us that way. But we loved them. And then it was just kind of that step by step of, I took that next level to that kind of next level coach, but at the same time, learned so much about what the sport can offer me and what the sport can do for me, not just results wise and college wise, but truly learning everything about this sport and going to clinics and doing all those things, which again, I don't even remember all the coaches I've worked with at all the different clinics or camps I've been to, but I can tell you I've taken something from probably every single one of them, and it's somewhere in my coaching for sure. So yeah, I think it's hard to pinpoint exactly, because I think I've taken from so many different coaches, and then just conversations and being blessed enough to have the college career that I had gave me access to some of the college or elite level coaches as well, to kind of develop some of that as I was a young head coach, kind of jumping into this, both feet and ready to do what I believed best. But having that access to coaches that have been through this before, and making sure that it just wasn't me going through these ups and downs of coaches, but having that access as well, really kind of helped develop me from top to bottom.
Absolutely. And when we think of our topic today, which is coaching with intention, when you're preparing your workouts, and we're not talking about simply the X's and O's here, what are some central goals that you want to bring to the pool every day when you're getting ready for workout?
That's a good question, actually. The daily consistency is a key word for me. I'll use consistency probably every day, just because that's the one thing that carries over. We will change up what we're doing on a particular day, and I need to teach. A lot of it's going to be teaching as well, but consistency and teaching why we do things. I think it's easy for us as coaches to get into just do this and you'll be good. or you'll be better and you'll reach your goals and you'll be happy. Like I'm just trying to help me help you type of situation. But when it comes down to kind of getting into it a little bit more, the consistency of that approach and loving coming into the process and loving the opportunity to be better every day. I try to share a little bit about kind of where I am or where I was as an athlete or what I've seen from different athletes all over. And one of those things is going to be that consistent chase to be better, not to be faster necessarily, but to be better and to be better at each exercise that they do, whether it's a warm up to swim, dry land exercise that they do nearly every single day, or whether it's a new drill in the water that's more fun for them. The engagement and being better at everything that we do is kind of what life's about anytime that you're chasing an elite level of anything. And what we're coaching these days are developing elite level swimmers, whether it's sectionals above, let's say. That's an elite level athlete already. If you look at any other percentage of a sport, that's a very high level of elite swimming. To go continue from that, then they have to start to embrace that process and embrace the consistency of looking to be better at everything they do. And it's not an easy thing to do. You go through the mid-season blues or the ups and downs of this trying to be consistent when this sport wants to do everything against you to challenge you to be there. But that's what it's kind of about. And that's really kind of the message I try to bring. And the energy I try to bring is based around that. I believe every day is that opportunity to be better. And the meets are going to show us the results. And I love seeing the results. It's one of my favorite times is that smile right after the race when I hit the wall. But the day-to-day of it and the energy that I at least hope I can bring is about that. It's about kind of chasing to be better. And whether you're trying to overcome something and to be better that way, or whether you're chasing an elite level goal later on in life, it's the same process. And that's kind of what drives me. And the biggest intention that I have, regardless of what we're doing as the X and O's, is to do that piece really well.
You make a great point about the athletes who reach a certain level and then they know that there's a next step to take. And for me, and for a lot of the guests that we've had on Coach's Corner, I think we might agree that there's nothing more fun or rewarding when you see an athlete have a success. You know the expectations that are going to come after that success. You know what that next step is. And then maybe 6 months or a year later, you're there. For me, that's a really rewarding process. Is that something that you take the time to stop and enjoy and cherish in those moments?
Not as much as I should. It's going to be the simple answer is absolutely not as much as I should. I've learned to more now than when I was a younger coach, for sure. There's points in time that I'll stop and enjoy it, and I'll make a point to stop and enjoy it personally as well. I think it's important in terms of with the team and in that environment to kind of let that energy out and really enjoy the work that's put in, both coach and swimmer wise. But for me, it's kind of stopping later and just in a quiet environment, slowing down a little bit and just kind of enjoying the process that was worked throughout that. And I use that word a lot, I know. But that's the consistency and that longer term view of seeing success, but then deciding and wanting more from it. And that chase of that next 6 months to a year that you described, and then seeing them achieve that because of that and achieve it to a level that, a year ago, they didn't necessarily believe that they could, is why we're here. And it's that kind of ingraining that type of confidence in themselves with the idea behind it that they have to work this process and work really hard and continuing to challenge themselves every time. We can't get complacent on that either. And if they do that, and when they do that, it touches our coaches' hearts, because that's exactly why we do it. They've worked that whole process and have gone through the ups and downs and have been consistent and battled everything that this sport throws at them, I'm sure, and find that success in it. That to me is what means the most, for sure.
Now, those of you that know you and your athletes who have swum for you will know this, I'm sure. But the two major things that Coach Julian wants his athletes to get out of the sport before they're finished are, number one, lifelong memories, number two, life lessons. And I just want to give you a heads up that we do our homework here at Coach's Corner. So I know that those are two big philosophical pillars of your program. Talk to me about how you came to lifelong memories and life lessons as the driving forces behind what you do programmatically. Because for a lot of us, especially the younger coaches this day and age, they'll say pillars that are driving performance. But for you, we have these pillars that are much more deeply rooted in character development. Talk to me about how you came to that.
Ooh, that's been a development over time for sure. The life lessons has been there important. I figured out early on in terms of what means the most to me and really what I have control over. The results aspect of that isn't something that I have full control over. The idea of the most common, I forget the saying exactly, but the most common things is wasted talent or wasted potential. It's true. But if I have control over the culture or atmosphere that I can create as the head coach, I do have control to some degree of that. And the life lessons is something that, what do I want beyond swimming? And to me, both of these are performance enhancers and performance driven for sure. That's the side of things that can't be taken out of me, is that competitive side. But it's on a level that I can control the controllables a little bit more. If it's just result based, then I'm not going to make the best decisions as a team, and I'm not going to make the best decisions as those individuals in my mind. I may make the best decision for them to have the success in that season or the next season or the short period of time they're with me, but I'm not making the best decision for them as people and for them as performance over time. Whether it's my summers or whether it's even my son, it wasn't going to be a rush for performance. It had to be learning lessons. And my son actually is probably one of the main reasons I've learned the lesson along the way is he does stuff on Trenton time. He wasn't going to be forced. He wasn't going to be forced on us on anything really. Yes, there are some things that had to be done. But in general, he had his time frame and he was going to make the decision. And if we forced it, it wasn't going to change the time frame, but it was going to change how successful that procedure was or that process was. So there's been, being a dad is definitely a piece of that. Loving this sport has definitely been a piece of what I want to give back and what can I give everybody in the pool. I didn't want to have just a team that I was focused on the top 20 swimmers and then the rest were kind of funding that performance. I wanted to have a team where I could serve the entire team and develop the performance that I believe can still be developed in that environment. So it was a growth throughout my coaching for sure. And to be honest, I've apologized to actually some of my coaches and they used to swim for me. But I'm a much better coach now than I was 10 years ago. And hopefully I'm going to be a much better coach 10 years from now than I am now. And it's because I continue to grow and foster things like that. I'm probably more driven now than I was, well, not more driven than 10 years ago, but just as driven and push them just as hard. But I do it for different reasons and I do it for different intentions now.
Sure. And when we think about a lot of what you just said in terms of the performance drivers behind your goals, I know that you value being a great teammate as much as you value anything. So what are some things that your program does from a young age that develops those bonds between athletes and creates peer groups that are really supportive of one another?
Oh, excuse me. You guys do your research for sure. Yeah, team is I think it's just has to be an ongoing thing. I'd love to say I have certain things that we do that work really well, and I'm not a very good coach mentor or coach sharing like that, because I don't have individual things. I like to take the situation that presents itself and figure out what's going to be the best way forward. In terms of creating the team environment, to me, I think it's about truly being committed to it. If it didn't really mean as much to me, I wouldn't create the team that we've been able to create. It comes up a lot, actually, when people ask me how we do so well in Swimathon. How do you create such a team and get such a support for Swimathon? What must be doing something really well? I believe our Swimathon event is great, but it's not magic. We don't get the support because we do a really good event and people just want to participate and give us money. We get that support because of the team atmosphere. And with the team atmosphere is there because every time I write an email and have the word team in it, it's all caps. Every letter is all caps because I want to reinforce that. Relays are going to be number one. We have people that say, hey, I want to go to finals, but I have to leave early, so I can't swim relays. Well, you can tell me what time you have to leave, and if it's before that time that or if it's after that time that your individual event comes, then we're going to scratch you from that event and you'll be out for the meet because of that. Or you commit to swimming relays. And it's that continuous reinforcement of team over everything else. I just talked to kind of some new swimmers coming on, actually, and talking about that the old All Blacks kind of saying of leave the team better than you found it. You have to find a way to leave things better than you found it. And team-wise, that means being supportive. That means being positive. It means being holding each other accountable for the best of that person, not just because you want to get mad at them or yell at them, but because you want them to be successful at the end of the season. But the bottom line is, as any coach knows, that can be perfect today, and it's not going to be perfect tomorrow unless I continue that reinforcement of team and how important it is to us as the overall program.
I love it. I love it. And, we share a similar philosophy there where I'm constantly, and I've probably said this on this show so many times, but I'm constantly talking to our kids about being as excited for their teammates' success as they are about their own. And I think if you take that approach every day, they're going to start to really value that. And you and I have both been at meets where, you have 2 or 3 kids put something together, and then the next one goes fast, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And that becomes a really important shared experience. So I'm really happy to hear every time I have a guest on that we go to this point where we talk about how important the aspect of team is.
Yeah, well, you can see it at meets on the negative side as well.
That's right.
Bad swim, and their swim means more than the team, and they don't give back to that team atmosphere, and it just starts to chip away.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely.
We've had so many coaches on this year who have had the great fortune of having their children or their stepchildren as their athletes and coaching their athletes. And you and I have shared that experience together too. And it's been really fun to watch Trenton's progression. Trenton and Michaela are almost the same exact age, so they've kind of come up together at these meets. And I finally got to see him swim in Italy last summer. And like I said, one of the most common themes of Coach's Corner has been what it's like to coach your own children. He grew up in a house where he had 2 national team alumni for parents, an Olympian for a parent. So I guess my first question is, how cool is it to kind of share that national team tradition and experience in your house? What does that mean to you guys?
That meant a lot. I mean, in the end, we truly took the approach with Trenton that we take with all of our athletes. So it was about the life lessons and things like that. But it just meant a lot. I mean, it was a blast to coach him and do that stuff. But to have him make the national team, and for me, just the little extra ties of making the World University Games and going to Italy for that matter. That was my experience of going to Sicily, Italy as my first national team. Hopefully it won't be his first and last, but it was his first as well. It was fun, and it was an interesting. We got to know each other a little bit better there. It was an interesting time for me. It just happened to be. I mean, he was into his sophomore year, I think. But we went out to dinner the last night, And it was just that first time I had seen him grow and seen him maturing, and it wasn't like it was a night and day thing. But it was the first dinner when it just seemed like I was having dinner with my wife and my adult son, right? And it was just that kind of that switch to, he's in a whole different place now, and he's at a whole different place in his life. And it was fun to be a part of and fun to watch for sure.
For me, very similar. And I remember watching that 800 free relay. We were neck and neck with the Italians, and he dives in and goes on 146. That was such an amazing swim. And it was written all over your face, man. I mean, you were pumped up.
Even again, to have him come back from a disappointing, in his eyes, disappointing 200 fly swim into that relay, and to do it on a relay. I mean, it's what means the most to him as well, coming out of our program and all the stuff that we just talked about. So to see him do it that way and to do it for the team, to say I was pumped up, I think is probably an understatement.
And what a great representation of your program and the programmatic lessons. We talked about how important it is in your program to be a part of relays, and there it is playing out. Yeah.
And he's being on the longer side of things, 200 fly, 400 IM, or type of 500 freer. He's worked really hard to earn that opportunity to find those relay opportunities. So that meant a lot to him. So it was so exciting to see that go down.
Sure. And in our house, when Michaela was younger, I remember very vividly at 12 years old saying, I want to put that American flag on my cap. And to see that come to fruition, here she is, 21 years old. That was pretty special. And we had a lot of tough moments along the ways, and some really epic, disappointing performances that eventually led to where we are right now. And then we had some wonderful times too. So talk about some of those difficult moments and some of the joyful ones that you shared with him along the way.
Yeah, no, it has been an up and down battle for sure for Trenton. He's overcome, I mean, just on the personal side, he's had to go along the journeys with me in terms of the health side. And he handled it really well, but he definitely had his impact. But on the other side, I think it's also driven him a little bit more. He took another step when I went through the lung cancer journey almost 6 years ago now. He took another step, but he's been through injuries. He just, as he came into my group and started kind of this process, he hurt his ankle, of which took him 6 months to heal. But he took those 6 months just to kind of drive his upper arms and get stronger, and went from like a 10:30 flat start 1,000 person to our in workout 1,000 of breaking 10 minutes for the first time, pole buoy only, after a bunch of time of doing this. But that was kind of his start of being focused on it. And then going on and just little things. He didn't get the opportunity to represent the junior national team because the meet we went to had horrible air quality in Dallas. And we were going for his trial cuts. So we cut out of the meet and we just swam the long course time trials that they set up in finals. Well, he had swam the 400 IM the full day, the first day, and couldn't eat dinner and couldn't breathe even at the end. So we held him out of the meet and had him just do the time trial. Well, because it was a time trial, that time didn't count towards the junior national team anymore. So he went 159, crushed it his junior year, I think. And he would have been fourth or something like that on the list, but didn't get to go because or didn't get to be named on the team, at least because of that. So disappointing, but all right, we'll continue to go. Hurt his shoulder his senior year. So he was basically out his full senior year and not able to race nearly the same way, but again, kind of transferred that focus back to his legs and worked his legs. And all of that process, the process itself never changed. So as he went through, and then as he went to Cal, he's had some amazing improvement, but the coaches at Rose Bowl already knew that it was coming, right? You see enough, and you see somebody and everything that they go through, but also the work that they're putting in and the consistency that they put in, you see it coming. Luckily, he found is his perfect place. I mean, it's fit perfectly for him up at Cal, and he's loved it up there. But it was that perfect kind of just next step into continuing his process and trying to kind of put all the pieces together that had come together nicely, but were not exactly fitting perfectly all the way along.
I think you said it earlier, and it's probably the most important aspect of the relationship. We had a rule where when we got in the car to go home after practice, like that was it, and anytime a swimming conversation came up, it was generated by our kids. So I think, you spoke to that too, because Trenton's on Trenton time, and he learned his things in his own process, and you had the wherewithal and the mindset to kind of appreciate that and appreciate that it was his sport. I think that's probably one of the most important things, is that we can't own their development through the sport. They have to take ownership.
Yeah. It's been an interesting thing on two fronts. One, as a coach, it's nice to have that in your back pocket when I'm telling somebody what I think they need to be doing, and to have in the back pocket that I went along this journey. Trenton isn't where he was because he was there the whole time. He had to take his time. He had to take his time of not wanting to swim really for a while, and that had to be okay with us. So yeah, no, we've come a long way that way for sure. In learning that. There's the second piece. I drawing a blank on the second piece now.
Well, no, you hit the nail right on the head, and that's just allowing them to have ownership of their sport.
The second piece was just going almost the exact same line as you had. I was at the pool, I was coach. At home, I was dad, unless he wanted me to be coach, and then I would be coach. And the reason we had that kind of extra twist on there is because he was the type of person that didn't want to take extra time at the pool. He didn't want to deal with like, oh, your dad just pays attention to you or things like that. So he'd ask questions and listen for sure, but he didn't want to take a lot of time. So we'd have a lot of conversations at home, but it was always driven by him. And then we'd have an honest conversation. If he wasn't doing a good thing, he'd hear that he wasn't doing a good thing. Most of the time he was doing pretty well, like I said, and it didn't have to be a frustrating time. But it was driven by him for sure when we were at home.
So as a young coach growing up in the sport in my early years, back in the early 2000s, and starting to get a broader understanding of what the sport of swimming in the United States is, as I traveled, to different U.S. Opens as an athlete, and we did some training trips out west. Talk to me about what it's like growing up in Southern California swimming. So for us in the frigid Northeast here, we only get to go there when there's a nationals. We only get to go there on training trip, and we get there and we're like, this is the Mecca. I mean, these kids are surfing in the morning. They're playing water polo in the afternoon, and then they're going to swim practice. And by the way, they're a beach lifeguard too. So this lifestyle to us was like this whole different thing. What was it like growing up in Southern California swimming?
I mean, to a large degree, it's true. A lot of the time is like that. A lot of the time the weather is great, and the beach is everything seems about 30 minutes away. But the beach is only 30 minutes away. So we were going, especially in high school and college, going to the beach a lot, and easy enough to do it from SC and things like that. Easy. I actually lived out there my 5th year, so living that lifestyle to its fullest by my 5th year of college. So yeah, no, swimming that way is perfect fit for Southern California. There is the other side, of course. There is the cold side. The great thing about the weather in Southern California is all the pools can be outdoors. The unfortunate thing is winter still gets cold, especially at 5 o'clock in the morning when it's literally freezing on deck in the 20s or at least low 30s. And you have frost on deck and you have all that going on. And you're from Southern California, so you don't have quite the same winter gear as everybody else from across the country. So those get to be some pretty cold days standing on deck, and I've gotten to know long underwear and things like that a little bit better in my coaching career now. But no, it's pretty special to be Southern California. I mean, you can't match the weather and the opportunities there. For me, having all outdoors is a little bit unfortunate, though. I miss the indoor competition. So, like when we go and travel to meets and go indoors, it's really fun for me. To me, that was always the championship meet environment. So when you go and you kind of change that environment, you go indoors and you have that chlorinated smell. That to me is kind of fun coming from a Southern California environment where you don't get that as often. We used to have this great old school pool. At least for short course championship meets, but they had to shut that down and close it down. So now we don't really have an indoor pool to go to for those championship meets. So we lose out there a little bit, I think, but otherwise, all in all, it's pretty good to be in Southern California.
So I'm 19 years old. We go to the Santa Clara Grand Prix, and it's not Southern California, but I'm like, man, I should have moved out here. You know, like, you just like swimming was so important. And at that pool, you know, in that time, which is a little after you, a couple years after you, you know, it was remarkable. But talk to me about what it was like in your prime, you know, 96, 97, 98, our U.S. Olympic team, and Christine was very much a part of this, your wife, had some of the marquee blue blood names. You're talking about Dolan and Namesnick and Malchow. And I mean, what a group. And I think you were sixth at Olympic trials in 96. What was it like? And those are titan names in our sport. What was the atmosphere like back then? And how has it changed a little bit over the last couple quads?
You know, that's interesting. It was obvious. I think every era is going to be an interesting area for swimming. 200 fly was definitely an interesting one. Melvin Stewart had even come back and was going in that 96 race. Didn't make the team that year, but was there and part of that top six ahead of me as well. It was definitely an interesting time. What I've come to find most in terms of kind of thinking back to my career to now is the depth of which the top end is competing at now. I mean, it used to be in my day that if you heard a world record broken or even an American record, you had a pretty good idea of who did it, right? World record broken in the 200 butterfly. I'm going to guess it was Malchow. I was probably watching him anyway at that point in time. But you probably knew during that phase that that's probably who did it. It's a little bit like that now, but I'm not sure it is exactly. If you watched ISL just this past weekend, American record. Well, let's go actually to Petey's world record. World record. Petey broke it by 8/100ths, of which he touched the head of the next person, I think it was, or something of that nature. Very easily could have been somebody else that a lot of non-swimming purists we had no idea who that would have been. Short course meters, all right, a little bit different, but the depth now of an American record, or let's say the U.S. Open record in the 1650, when 6 people go under it at NC2As, right? A race like that where it's like, oh, you see how fast that sixth person went in that race? The fastest ever, except for the 5 people that touched in front of them. That type of depth in this environment is crazy to me. But that to me is the biggest difference. Sure. And then have some people still stand out like Caleb or whoever in terms of those levels is really impressive in terms of standing out in a field that is so deep to begin with, and to be able to race to that level consistently is an impressive feat to do. And we definitely had it in terms of individuals. Now I think we have it as groups, and it's an exciting thing for the sport, I think.
No doubt about it. And it's a perfect segue because you coached in the ISL last year. And I remember I'm watching it on TV at home, and I just see you going nuts. Like you were jumping up and down. You were going nuts. I texted you. I'm like, this is awesome to see, this enthusiasm. You know, I think sometimes we're so wrapped up in our performances here and you know, outside of Olympic trials or maybe a really stacked summer nationals, we get away from some of that. But I'm watching the ISL last year and I'm like, Jeff Julian's going nuts. Talk about the ISL, your experience with it, and what you think it's doing for our sport.
The ISL, the opportunity of the ISL for the pros, I think is amazing. I think in terms of how it's structured, not all the details. I'm not going to get into kind of every single detail of it, but the overall opportunity and the structure for it and the environment for the swimmers. I mean, I got to tell you, as much as I loved it, and I was pumped up every single meet, every single session. It was definitely exciting and something that I'll forever treasure. But it's the same for the swimmers. It's not like they're going in there and dragging, getting up and swimming again, and dragging to go to another session the next day. And then even in this environment, I wasn't there this year, but I was able to stay in touch with a number of the swimmers and just hear the experience a little bit. 6 weeks there, racing often during that period of time. Nobody's in there dragging. Everybody's loving it and loving the opportunity to get up and race. And it's that energy and that excitement that's there. And it's like in our meets, it's hard to duplicate that, right? So the energy that I had is, we had a 2-hour session of a meet with small breaks of 15 minutes in there twice. And otherwise you're going meet or event to event and pumped up, and it's a team competition, and it's only that one heat that you're watching, and then it's on to the next heat, and everything engages you, right? Whether you're a coach or whether you're watching at home, that's what it's meant to do. And for the sport of swimming, I think that's kind of where this needs to go if we're going to get more viewership in terms of outside people watching the sport, or let's be honest, even ex-swimmers watching the sport. Ex-swimmers don't watch swimming just because it's swimming, it's on TV. They watch it if they have something that's enticing them to watch it or exciting to do it. And this environment was incredible. The energy there and the swimmers themselves and how they came together and kind of embraced the team feel was pretty special, because we talked about team this entire time. Last year, Coach Troy wasn't there the first meet, so I got a chance to kind of lead a little bit there as well. And my first message was all about team. It's like, look, you're all pros and you're all amazing swimmers. The difference is going to be who embraces the team atmosphere and who does it for somebody else more than themselves in this whole environment. And the Condors have done an amazing job of that. But really, if you watch across the ISL league, all of those athletes are loving what they're doing. So if we can keep this going, I think it'll be huge for the sport.
Just what an exciting time, right? I mean, we've never really seen anything like this. So it's just such an exciting time to see something like this. And, you know, we do get our little age groupers. We say, you know, what's your ultimate goal? And they're starting to say, like, I want to be a pro swimmer. let's pump the brakes a little bit. But it's kind of cool that, you know, that's on their mind. That was never something that you and I got to even think about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's to do it because of that. I mean, maybe it's the title of pro swimmer a little bit, but to do it because of what they're watching and to do it because these meets are so exciting. It's something that I think we need to pay attention to. And on the huge scheme of USA Swimming, it's tough to duplicate at that level and have that excitement at meets. But I think at some point in time, it's kind of what we need to be looking at offering something close to that excitement and that team feel and all of those things as we kind of progress to grow our sport.
So many of your answers revolve around the idea of team. You've mentioned it in almost all of your responses. And I want to talk about a really important team right now, and that's Team Jeff. You know, many of us know the challenges that you've faced fighting cancer over the last 6 years. Can you talk to us a little bit about your journey battling the disease? Maybe share some of the strategies that you've used that might help others who are watching, who might be forging their own battle, and maybe how your experience as an athlete has helped you face some of these difficult moments.
Absolutely, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to help anybody who's struggling. That's been kind of my go-to now in terms of sharing my story. Most of the time, it's with somebody who's going through it or somebody who has a family member or close friend going through it, and always happy to help in any way that I can. My experience has been an up and down journey. I mean, almost 6 years ago now, so January of 2015, I was diagnosed with lung cancer. And really right from the start, Team Jeff, which I still have a hard time kind of comprehending at times, and is one of the things that kind of will get me teary-eyed. So I apologize in advance if that happens. But that support's been amazing. But we talk about what's reinforced. That was already in there, but what's reinforced the idea of learning life lessons and things of that nature. Well, very clearly, the last 6 years, my health has been one of those, and my journey of going through cancer, because I used everything that I try to teach in swimming. So everything that I learned through as an athlete and everything that I learned as a coach all went into that first battle with cancer. And now it's going into my second one as well. But when that happened, it became, how do I set up my own process? How do I set up what's going to make me most likely to succeed? No, I don't have control of everything. And I knew I was given 4% chance of being here today. With the diagnosis I was given in 2015, at the time of survival rates, my prognosis was 4% survival for 5 years, not even 6 years. But it needed to be the positive mindset, and it needed to be all of those life lessons that I try to instill in kind of creating a process, regardless of how challenging that process may be. We look at things, and how I kind of related to it is I was chasing the Olympic dream for my entire career. I didn't quite make it, but I made it to a very, very, very small percentage within that chance and within the sport overall of swimming as an athlete. Well, that percentage is much smaller than 4%. And then you start to look at things of, let's even just take the 4%. Well, somebody has to be that 4%, right? So if I can't keep a positive mind, and if I start taking away from it, it's the same as an athlete or in the water. If I'm already starting to put roadblocks ahead of myself, of which I already know is going to be a challenging road, then I'm taking myself out of it. So I had to stay positive as much as I could. So I had my mantra of I believe, and I am strong, and I am ready, and I will win, because I needed to remind myself of those things along the way, because it's not an easy journey. I continue to learn, and the one thing I battle against that I learned in the sport is pushing myself beyond what is necessarily best for me. That's still quite obviously something that I am learning, as my current health journey had me pushing myself down to losing 30 pounds and into a position of which I was just purely unhealthy. Actually, even talking at ASCA in September, before going into the hospital and learning that now I'm dealing with a second type of stomach cancer now. And this is a whole different battle, of which, yeah, I thought I was tough and got through the first one and got all this stuff. And now I got to do it again, and I got to stand up and figure out how to get through this, and figure out how to have the same kind of positive attitude and positive mindset, and know that, again, I can overcome these odds that are thrown ahead of me. Not because I have anything special in terms of everything else, in terms of the treatment, but because I can put all of the different pieces together. And even treatment-wise, I'm going to do what I can to make sure that that works well. And one of the things that I've learned to, I'm still learning to do, is take care of myself. That, yes, I could push through and I could be successful something else in terms of, let's say, being on deck. I could be on deck a few more days for sure, but I'm going to take away from my personal health and the opportunity for my body to do what it needs to do in terms of killing the cancer. So it's some of those things in terms of my personal mentality. Everybody is going to have their own journey through things like cancer. But in terms of where I stand, the sports and what I teach in terms of the life lessons within a sport and chasing the elite levels, beating cancer or overcoming anything really tough in life is an elite level thing to do. So the way that we approach that, while it seems such a negative approach starting point, it's the same exact process in my mind that it is to be chasing the Olympic team or chasing the Olympic dream of a gold medal or those things.
It's such an inspiring mindset, and I certainly don't want to seem like I'm patronizing your your approach because there's so many beautiful things that we can take out of there, Jeff. I know from knowing you that hope plays an incredibly important role in your life. And I think a lot of times the athletes and the age groups that we're coaching, there's a cynical nature to it. You know, there's a cynical and sarcastic nature to it. It's part of our coping process with challenges. Talk to me about hope and the role it plays in your life.
Hope became very important to me 5.5 years ago or so, a little bit, almost 6 years ago, basically right when this started. I think most people didn't give hope much thought, right? We all understand what hope is, and we all have that general idea of really hope something happens in the future or whatever that idea may be. Until it's tested, and tested on any number of ways, but until hope is truly tested and you're knocked, I go through something that I call the process of hope now. And it involves this whole process of going from hope to dreams to goals to actually setting your process to getting a result, and then kind of taking that result and reinserting wherever you need to reinsert yourself within that process. You also have things involved that are kind of additive to the process of things like positivity and optimism. Optimism is what takes your dreams and lets you go into goals. You have that optimism to keep pushing. Positivity is what lets you really kind of work that process into results. But that overall process is going to be the same, I think, for everybody. Well, that first part of hope, and why I call it the process of hope, is luckily not everybody gets knocked all the way back to hope very often, if at all. And I love that. I hope they don't have to go through those things. But for people who get a result that knocks them all the way back to hope, and to even then have that tested. So for me, I was told I had lung cancer. This was almost 6 years ago. I was told I had lung cancer, but maybe just in the lung at that point in time. So maybe there was surgery. So I was like, all right, let's do this. We can get this out. Then I was told I had stage 4 lung cancer and only 4% chance of making it five years and things like that. And that was another thing to ingest and take in. But I was like, all right, I can still do this. We can find a way. We'll make this happen. But then to go to the first 4 doctors and to be looked at like I was a foregone conclusion, when me as a coach and me as a person coming from sport was going to those doctors as my leaders in terms of figuring out a way to make this happen, that was very disheartening. And that took away my hope almost entirely. Until I went to, I think it was the 5th doctor's visit. But I went to that doctor's, just so happens to be a USC doctor. But went to that doctor, and she didn't tell me anything different. She didn't tell me different numbers, or she didn't just try to give me this overly positive pitch on things. But she worked with me. She gave me the same numbers. She didn't even have a trial for me to do anything other than the standard of care, which had already been offered by the other 3 or 4 doctors. But what she did do was start to work with me right away. She's like, but I believe that we were having some other tests done that she believes that could show us different things. She believed that could be the case for sure because I was so healthy. But even if that wasn't the case, she wanted to start the process of chemo. I was going to have to take a B12 sauce to see it. Let's just do it today just in case we can start it. She was on my team and she was willing to work with me, and that's all I needed. And in doing so, I've vowed during that time, I was well enough that knew that I was losing hope because I didn't even want to go into that doctor's visit. But I did go in, and I vowed from that point in time to never, ever give up hope. And as I share my story, one of the things that I truly don't understand is the term false hope. I understand what people mean by it. But hope isn't a promise. Hope isn't a guaranteed thing. Hope is a belief that you believe tomorrow can be better, or you believe that opportunity could present itself down the road and you're willing to go after it. That's what hope means, right? I don't understand how that could ever be false, right? I have hope now. I have to battle again. It's on the border of stage 3 or stage 4 stomach cancer. But if I didn't have hope, what would I have, right? Most people would tell me that the percentage that I have, again, not quite 4%, but not a outstanding number. Again, that hope isn't on your side. But if you don't have hope in life, then what do you have, right? And I believe that to my heart, that we can never give up hope. So therefore, there can never be anything of false hope. Yes, we may not all become Olympians, and that's going to be something that we'll have to deal with. But is tomorrow going to be better than today? Absolutely. Is my life worse because I'm not an Olympian? No, absolutely not. I've learned a lot throughout, and I'm the coach I am today, probably because I didn't become an Olympian. That's not to say Olympians can't be great coaches, but I believe they have certain things that they're going to have to overcome in order to truly be a coach on the things that I mean being a great coach at. That's not the X's and O's, but that's the connection pieces and the pieces that have to be learned and the pieces that you have to be committed to this sport as a coach in order to learn. It's not just, I know how to do this part in the water, just do this and you'll be fast. So it's a lot of those things that came along this journey as well.
I think you have a master class ready to deploy for hope and what hope means. That was awesome.
I've talked a lot about hope. Yes, I believe it's the foundation of our lives. Luckily, we all don't have to lean on it as much, but some of us do. And if we lose it, then that's when it's the worst. So that's when I believe it's part of my duty to try to share my story that way.
Jeff, what does it feel like when you see teams like a Victor Swim Club have a hashtag Team Jeff on their website? What does that mean to you?
It's heartwarming. Sorry, I'm going to tear up for sure. It means a lot in terms of going through this now. Obviously, it gives me that drive. It gives me that motivation. It gives me the strength to get back up. It's the team of we talked about it earlier. Sorry. Of being part of something bigger than yourself, right? It's the same reason why it's the original way it's written is all caps team and all lower caps Jeff, not to undermine me at all, but to have the understanding that it's more than just me. I'm a part of something bigger. And that meant a lot to me. So to see it on teams like Victor Swim Club, and to see it on teams all over, and to see it from college teams, and to get the messages and things from so many teams at ISL and things like that, is still to this day emotionally one of the hardest things that I still overcome a lot, because it means so much to me. Sorry, take a breath. But that's this being Coach's Corner. I'll share a little bit with the coaches as well in terms of that. Those that are truly committed to this sport and truly giving your heart and soul to this sport, I also offer back that you may not get the opportunity to hear from everybody that the same way that I have. There's a lot that you don't hear or see that are there because of the impact you've made on people. So I think that to me is what's meant so much. Sorry.
It's pure emotion. And I had to ask you that because you have been an inspiration for me and my staff. And like I said, I'm watching you on TV last year, knowing everything that you're going through, and you are cheering so enthusiastically. And right on your forearm, it says Team Jeff. And I think to myself, it's 30 degrees this morning on this pool deck. Jeff Julian would be out here screaming and cheering right now, and he's going through what he's going through. So this, I got to get out there. I got to be part of Team Jeff. So we really appreciate it, man.
That's awesome. It's come to be my kind of driving word as a coach or leader, I guess, and more. If I can inspire people to do that and to take that next step and just to live their lives, and it's a meaningful thing for me to do.
Jeff, one thing that I've always known about you is you are always big into health and fitness, and it's part of the reason why you've been able to battle so well against cancer. So talk to the coaches about why coaches' health and wellness and coaches being able to seek some help if they need it. Talk about why that's important for all of us in the profession.
If you follow my journey at all, I think it goes along the same way as my health journey. Obviously cancer is cancer, and it's given its own category almost sometimes, but it's not different. The health things that we go through are largely coaches wise, I think, because of what we put ourselves through. Coaching being a whole different thing. I don't remember if it might have even been posted on the coaches forum or something like that, but I saw a meme the other day that said it changed the whole idea of do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. It said do what you love, and then it crossed out the end of it and said you'll work extremely hard, have no sense of balance between work and life, and take everything extremely personally. And I think coaching wise, that happens so often because of the nature, especially club coaching wise, because of the nature that we're working with families and we deal with the parents of which we're working with their most prized possession in life. They're not always going to respond the way that they should or react the way that they should, whether we're correct or not, or whether we're in the right or not. And learning how to take care of ourselves and learning how to balance kind of the mental side of that with the physical and taking care of yourselves. It's funny, I would not say that I've always been into health and fitness. I've always maybe been an athletic build, but my natural weight now is 45 pounds under what my top end weight was. I didn't watch it, right? And I let stress kind of tear me down, and I let weight get on because of stress, and I'd eat because I was just eating that stress, and I didn't take care of myself as I was a young coach and trying to kind of find my own confidence in the coaching world. I understood swimming, I understood those things, but it's a different thing to find it in the coaching world. So I believe Aska's doing a lot of things mentoring wise and trying to get coaches working with other coaches. I know it's tough. For me, I like to stay busy and I like to keep things going, but I think working with each other and helping our younger coaches learn it earlier and helping our older coaches understand that things like strength isn't about not asking for help. Actually, it's quite the opposite. It's what we tell our athletes of asking for help when you need it. That's what's the strongest. It's not about what you can push through silently, but it's about what you can do when you're taking care of yourselves appropriately. And that's asking for help when it's needed. It's about things like making sure that we have that balance. And it's an interesting word for sure. Balance isn't 50-50 by any means, but it has to be there. It has to be there for our lives. It has to be there for our families. And luckily, I think oftentimes the greatest families that can create share the swimming community to some way. Oftentimes we're teaching or coaching our kids, and our wife was also a swimmer. But at very least, the understanding of the chase of something elite and the chase of that. But then as us, in fairness to our families, also have to understand that it can't be that we have to be on deck every single time one of our swimmers is on deck. It's not fair to ourselves. We can't do that, right? Well, theoretically you can, but you're going to burn yourself out at some point in time, and you're going to grind away. And in my opinion, the whole 10 years from now or 5 years from now, you're not going to be a better coach. You may know more things, but you're going to be an older, bitter, cranky old coach that we all know and we've seen on deck. And it's not because they don't care. It's because they in my mind, they pushed themselves and only saw one way to do things and ground down to a way that they just couldn't do it that way anymore. So they're just going to do it as well as possible, but otherwise be cranky about it. And I think that's something that we can find just more happiness and better results along the way as well. If we can kind of find that balance a little bit more and show that type of feeling to our athletes. I think it's always about like, oh, that's a bad signal that we're showing our athletes if we're not on deck. I would argue the exact opposite. I think it's showing the athlete exactly what we're trying to teach them. Yes, for them, they need to be there in the water that day because that's part of their process and where they are. For us, as part of a career of, I've been doing this for nearly 20 years now. for a career of 20 years, I can't be expected to have the same expectation as you. I don't need it. You need to be there and in the water. I don't need that for you to be successful or for me to be successful. In fact, the more you can learn to do the performance of what I'm asking you to do with no matter who's on deck, the better for the athlete. And I know our college coaches will agree with that in terms of when they leave a club program to go to college. It can't be just the coach that drives that performance. It needs to be the athlete. And therefore, the coaches need to teach that versus just say that, well, I'm always here, so you always have to be here type of mentality that I think a lot of us heard growing up as swimming and still to this day kind of battle with when we're not on deck, that battle with that little bit of self-doubt of, should I be on deck or should I not be taking this time off or whatever it is. I think we need to find that balance a little bit better. Doesn't take away the drive for sure, but that balance and treating ourselves with the respect that we need to do for the long-term idea.
No doubt. And we've had some awesome discussion today, Jeff. It's been really great. And I'm so glad to hear, your perspective on the side of things. In 20 years of experience, you've learned so much. I have a couple quick fire questions that I've been asking our guests. And I know you'll like these ones because I think I have an idea of what gets you excited. So is it going to take a sub 21 second performance in the men's 50 free in Tokyo to win a gold medal?
Yes.
I think so too. I think so. I think it might take sub 20 or sub 21 to get a medal. I think we might be there. As we talk about the depth and things like that, and especially things like the 50 freestyle, I think we're going to start to look at, especially this year, the balance of hard work and rest. And I think we're going to have a lot of people benefit. I think we're already seeing it a little bit, but I think we're going to have a lot of people benefit from that little bit of quote unquote rest. That's been a common theme here on Coach's Corner. People have shared that before. And I heard Coach Troy earlier this year say, we're going to find out a lot about what it means to be aerobic animals. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. All right, women's 800 free. Does more than one person who shall not be named break 8 minutes?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to go with yes.
Yeah, I think it's happening. And then lastly, who do you think is off the radar screen that might make a big impact in either a men's or women's event when we get to Tokyo?
Oh, like completely off the radar screen?
Yeah. Surprise! Give me an insider's Jeff Julian pick for a breakout performance in Tokyo.
I feel like I'm being set up. I guess the breakout, the term breakout needs to be defined. I'm going to go ahead and say it and not care. I'm going to say Trenton Julian.
I love it. I knew that might have been in there, but I love it. Let's go. Let's have the belief.
He continues to have advancements that get noticed, but not really noticed. And he's had a year of training that behind him that has been impressive for him. So yeah, again, shaded with the proud pops there for sure. But yeah, in terms of truly surprised or kind of unnoted before, yeah.
I love it, man. I two moments where he really hit my radar screen is number one, he went that 140 point in the 2 fly early at Cal, and then the 339 and the 400 IM. I started saying to myself, well, there's some endurance in there too. And then I watched him go the 146 relay split. And it could happen, man. That's really exciting.
It's funny. His racing strategy, I take a little bit of blame for, I guess. But he's embraced learning how to race by being aggressive on it and just continuing to go until you learn how to race that race. The training part's always been there for him. That was never the question or the aerobic aspect of it. He's been a good trainer for a while now, but he has the tendency to be aggressive in these races and then fade. The 500 he lost at Pac-12s, and then some of those races like that. So I think a lot of the coaches have seen those things. It's not necessarily a fade over just a process of racing that race and taking that next step of, well, this is where I need to be, and I wasn't quite ready this time, but next time I'm going to be ready to be that fast going out and race through it. So he's embraced that strategy of which we took on. I didn't mind dying on the end of races as long as we were aggressive and getting out there and putting it on the line and then learning from it. And he's done that quite a bit. So it'll be a fun year, one way or the other. I'm proud of the process that he takes overall. So it'll be a fun year ahead.
I love it, Coach. Thank you so much for spending some time on the Coaches Corners with us today. We're going to have this episode available up on our website this afternoon on fitterandfaster.com/webcast. You can get to all the Coaches Corner episodes. Coach Jeff, Julian, I appreciate your time. We're excited to continue to watch you and your team grow. And I look forward to seeing you soon, man, hopefully before trials.
Absolutely. Always fun. Thanks for having me on. It's always fun to talk swimming.
All right, Coach. We'll see you soon, and we'll see you next week, everybody. We have Coach Salo on, and I think it'll be Wednesday. So looking forward to that, too. Thanks so much, Jeff, and I will see you on Tuesday for our meeting.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Take care, Coach.
All right.